Good morning, Martin Bar. Welcome back to Ardnamurchan. It's a bit breezy today, but it's not too bad. So the subject of this video is to talk about how I connect with the wild. And if you look at the scenery around me, you'll see that it's a pretty untouched area that I live in, which obviously makes things much easier. We're coming up to the vernal equinox, or the spring equinox. Now, the spring equinox is situated between the winter solstice and the summer solstice, and it's the time when the hours between sunrise and sunset are the same as sunset and sunrise. It's that point of balance early in the year. As Druids, we work with something we call the Wheel of the Year, and this consists of 8 festivals, 4 of which are solar festivals, the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices. And between those we have these other festivals we call either cross-quarters festivals or fire festivals. And the fire festivals is Imbolc, which has just passed, and Beltane, which is due to come, and then Lunasa, which is in the just after the height of summer, and then of course Samhain, that leads us into winter. So we're coming up to the spring equinox, and the reason that we celebrate these ceremonies throughout the year is to encourage us and facilitate our connection with the changing seasons, of which we are part of. In the modern world that most of us inhabit, it's very easy to actually forget the fact that we are part of everything you see surrounding me. This older tree by the side of me, probably 40 to 50% of the genetic makeup of that tree is the same as my genetic makeup and the same as your genetic makeup. And we constantly forget, and have to keep reminding ourselves that we are part of all this. So how do I personally connect with the wildness that is inherent in all things? I look around and I look at this older tree, and let me see, they're too high. But the reality of it is that the catkins that are on the alder are still hard and firm, and there's no sign of life coming into them yet. So I have to look closely at the detail in order to see the signs of life. Yes, there are the obvious things, and the obvious things are the daffodils that are in front of me. They've burst into life already. There are a few crocuses around the garden. But to actually see the signs of life in terms of leaf, the only thing I could find were some tiny, tiny little leaves poking out of a bramble. Another thing that always indicates to me that the summer is eventually going to come, even into these cold northern climes, is that the birch trees. As you can see from this drone shot that was taken up on the hill above where I live, the birch trees have got that wonderful purpley hue about them. And that's a sign that the sap is rising. And within probably another 4 weeks, you'll start to see the leaves start to come. We need a bit of warm weather, and the leaves will start to come, and you'll get that beautiful fresh green, late spring, early summer green. I find it absolutely magical. So as you can see, I'm starting to use the environment around me to anchor myself into this season. And yes, I have to look closely. There are a couple of sort of obvious things. The most obvious, and the one that I think is probably most useful to the average person, is daylight length. I have a routine where I get up every morning pretty much around about 7 o'clock, and I go and bathe in the river that's just down to the side here that you can see running past me. I've got a pool, a couple of pools further up the river. In Scotland, we refer to it as a burn. And every morning about 7 o'clock, I walk out of the back of my house and I walk up past this decking area, probably 150 yards, 150 metres, and go into the water. Now, from about the end of November, right through to mid-February, 7 o'clock in the morning in this latitude, it's dark, it's pitch black. So I use the torch. So once I get towards the end of Feb, it starts to get a bit lighter and you get that liminal light when the dawn is coming but the sun hasn't risen. And that's one of the strongest indicators for me of the changing season. The other thing that I actually notice as I walk out is that there are the birds starting to sing. Particularly in this area, we get robins singing and great tits. They've got very distinctive calls. And so they're things that actually allow me to connect in with the wildness, with the changing season, with the fact that I am part of this environment. Now, using the day length, you're actually plugging in, you're connecting into something that is actually within you, because deep in your brainstem, I think it's the hippocampus, there is an area of that responds to increasing light. The light that comes into our eyes affects that area, and it has a significant effect on our well-being. What happens, it actually increases the melatonin, and it also increases our serotonin. And that is one of the reasons why most people start to feel better in the spring. There's an element of lift, of energy coming into that. Now, animals sense the same thing. One of the things that I've noticed recently is that about a week or so ago, the frogs were spawning in the pond. Now, it's not, of course it was warm, of course it wasn't. It was probably only 3 degrees. But somehow those frogs have got some form of mechanism, even though they're buried in the mud, for their hibernation. They've got some form of mechanism that says, now's the time to get up and produce more frogs. So linking into daylight there's not only the sort of intellectual aspect to that, but there's also a much more primeval and physiological aspect. So I mentioned that as a druid, we have 8 festivals throughout the year. What we tend to do, we tend to put on our robes. And by actually wearing our robes, that brings us into a space where we enter what we call sacred theatre, and we perform a ceremony. And essentially that ceremony is acknowledging the place we're at in that moment. And as we're coming up to the equinox, we're in that point of balance. And when you're in a point of balance, it's a point of opportunity. You can move forward, you can tip one way or the other. And so the encouragement is to plant seeds, to actually start to prepare for the year ahead, to plant a seed that can be physical seeds. If you're into gardening, and I will confess that I'm not, because my land is all rocks and peat and trees and steeply sloping, it's very difficult to actually plant here and to get anything to grow. But if you're into growing, then yeah, this is the time you go out and plant seeds. But more importantly, it's about planting ideas. It's about planting intentions, so that as we move through the year, we can take that idea and manifest it in this world, and generally manifest it for the benefit of others rather than just for ourselves. So if what I've said has resonated with you, then just try those simple things. Just step outside and breathe the air. Feel the cold on your hands, like it's quite cool now here. It's not a warm day. Engage with the soil under your feet. Maybe walk barefoot sometimes. Acknowledge the change in day length. And if you want to be more practical about it, then yeah, plant the seed. And as you plant that seed in the pot, in the window box, in the garden, in your greenhouse, wherever it is, also plant within yourself an intention that is important to you. And as you nurture those seeds, nurture your intention. And see where it takes you. Because life is a journey and life is an adventure. So if you've got this far to listening to the ramblings of this old man, then thank you very much. If you have enjoyed it, then you might like to give me a like. And if you wish to be kept up to date with these videos coming out, then just click the subscribe button. It's gratifying to see that I'm reaching out to people and that people are resonating with what I'm talking about. What I will say to each and every one of you is that although the channel is now starting to grow, I don't intend to monetize it. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of monetizing what I consider a spiritual gift. And if you can accept it as a spiritual gift, that's what it is.